Hello, Gophers. You're listening to Go Podcast. I'm Dominic St-Pierre.
And I'm Morten.
I've been looking at this Reddit thread this morning. Someone was asking about podcasts, and then someone talked about Go Podcast, and I was oh, that's cool.
Oh,
So at least
I saw it, but I didn't see us mentions. But I was also very early. Are they saying nice things?
yes. Oh yeah,
Ah,
yeah. I
okay.
replied. And we receive a comment on the Slack channel. So I mean, little wins. Please join us. Please talk to us. Please talk about the show. So as much as I like, Cup of Go people, we are right there as well with our stats, but their engagement is way better. Maybe they are way better at engaging. And I'm taking that on my shoulders. This is something that I have, I'm not very good at, but it's nice to talk with people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So database today, well, and probably a couple of subject around databases. That database for me was my bread and butter. So when I was an employee, I was working at this. How can I say that? Let's call it a credit bureau. So basically, you live by the data that you have, and it was a small place, and the data was mostly what they were selling when you think about that. So that brought me from 0 to 1,000 very quickly. I needed to, because in a small company, typically you kind of do almost anything. So there, I was the database guy. I was the software engineer. I was mostly everything, and this this brought me this knowledge of when you do have the data that, well, either your clients are ready to pay for, or internal user wants to have. This is very very powerful. So you do have a lot of power when you can solve problems, power user problems by just having the data ready for them. So it was always nice, and I it's not a secret. I started my career in the Microsoft stack. So for me, it was all about Microsoft SQL Server at first, which admittedly is a good RDBMS, if I'm honest. It's nothing like Postgres and whatnot, but when you are on this ecosystem, it's still decent. Ish. I say ish because at the time there were no CLI at all, so it was all GUI based and whatnot. But still, the engine itself is pretty capable.
Yeah, they actually also in my first job they used it. Was also, but that is also a Denmark thing. They love Microsoft in Denmark, so everyone is using Microsoft. I never worked with it because I was not allowed to.
Gatekeeping.
I came with a background in finance, and the guy that had the shop was very old school, so he only let me touch the front end. Never touched the back end, and I was like, okay, fair enough. So I never actually worked with it directly, but I have been adjacent to it in my early career, and then luckily never again. But also it's funny that we mentioned that you're wearing so many hats. I've already done like startups, or been part of like small teams in larger corporations. So I've only always been exposed to that you have to wear all the hats. That's not really. I never really worked in a place where we had like an infra team. At least not someone that we directly talk to. It's always been something like we figure out everything.
Yeah.
It must be nice, but it's fun to hear those kind of stories because it's a different world, right? Especially when there are like 20,000 developers or something like that. Of course, you have very, very specialized teams, but never been exposed to just telling infra to please make a release or QA or something like that's me.
It's a totally different world, and if I'm honest, I really enjoyed this time myself, because you are learning so much when you are quote unquote a small team or alone, for that matter. So I was alone for a long time. So for me it was like a playground. I like to take that to think of that place as a playground. I was there for 2000 to 2023. I was an employee at first, but after that I was just consulting there. I was there until the acquisition of Equifax, and when Equifax bought or acquired the company, I finally saw what it is to be in an enterprise, in an organization that is exactly like you said. You don't have access to do anything. You need to ask for anything. It was so far from my reality that it was pretty hard for me to just understand how things were going to work. When you are in a small place, when something is not working, well, you just fix it. It's like it. I like to think that I was in a startup environment without or before even the startup world started itself. So if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It was just so tiny, but at the same time, the amount of data, because a credit bureau is something that, like I said, you make money by doing credit reports on multiple companies. So it was nothing regarding individuals like what Equifax are strong in. It was all about food companies. So it was a tiny market, but it was the Canadian only leader in that market. So think of company like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all the beers company in Canada and whatnot. So all of those were sending their data. So I've inherited this department when I was a junior developer. So let's say, I don't know, 21 or 22 years old. So at that time you need to manage a amount of data, and this data is kind of critical as well. So you have your hands full time on the database. I really enjoyed it. For me, writing SQL is just natural. That's why I really appreciate SQL C and tools like that lets you write the SQL, because for me it just makes sense to I don't know, it's what I've been writing for a long time, and to have the control over your queries, in my opinion, is very, very important, because how are you going to diagnose any kind of performance problem if you don't really have an easy way to copy paste the SQL query and just run a query executor plan and whatnot? So how are you going to see which of your queries involve scanning table and whatnot? Those things are very, very important when you are managing a decent amount of data. So of course, if you just have a small application, it's just like, I don't know, let's say under 1 million rows in a table. Well, most agents relational database engine will just manage that, even if you do a bad job at creating indexes and whatnot. But as soon as you start to have real data, I mean, this is where it gets interesting.
So you're telling me, as a Go developer, you do not like ORMs? That is
that is a shocker.
It's a big shocker. No, but I agree with it. I really prefer to write SQL. I never really used ORMs or been involved in frameworks that used ORMs. I started out in Python and Django like way back, and then switched over. So I never really used an ORM. Or been used to having like those kind of access patterns, right? So I also just prefer to write the SQL, and it's there. Especially using SQL-C now for a very long time. It's it gets tedious. I remember when we didn't have it, and you had to write it kind of like in what's it called? Like you just write a string with the SQL, and then have to debug it, right? So really nice to work with these kind of tools like SQL-C and be in full control. I actually just switched and away from SQL-C, which is kind of contradictory to what I'm saying right now.
That's interesting. So what happened exactly, and why have you decided? Because you had a working solution. So what happened exactly?
I wanted a way to hook into like the process, like adding easier way to add policies, like access patterns, who can modify what, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because as deploy quit grew, like I could just create a function, right, and then apply it every time. That's fine, but I think you end up in a way. I ended up in a way where I was like, this would be nice if we could just centralize it, like they do in Rails. So I started playing around with that, and I had to write these wrapper functions that didn't really do anything because you could just access the queries directly. So I kind of ended up rewriting the thing to use like an unexported or private struct that has some methods, and then it has an entity, and then it has an exported variable of the private struct that the users can then interact with, and then I can start to centralize the logic a bit more. And then I found out like, okay, hooks is still like hooking into the process is not really what I wanna be doing, because it can like hide the processes, right? And it ended up being a bit of a mess. But I did end up switching over to using Bun, simply because I can then I can get some of I can still write pure SQL if I want to, but the building and doing like what's it called, dynamic queries and all those kind of things becomes a bit easier to write, and then now I don't have to like write in two layers. So I started wanting to centralize like access logic, and now I ended up going away for it for different reasons, because I wanted more economics, and I feel like the Bun setup is a little bit more economic when you're doing like MVC style applications, because you don't have to jump around. You can just write it. It becomes faster to write it, and I found a really nice feature of Bun that you can. I use a lot of enums, or let's say quote unquote enums, because Go doesn't want to support it, right? But you can actually map it directly, so you can get like an entity and then map your custom type from the database into the enum. So I didn't have to do a lot of parsing layers, which is also very, very nice. I'm rambling a little bit now, but yeah, I went away from SQL-C to Bun for the framework. Yeah.
So wait a minute. So in my head, Bun is like this, I don't know, TypeScript compiler or alternative to Node.js. Is that something that I don't know of? What is Bun exactly?
It's poorly named. I'm not sure if it's poorly named, because I'm pretty sure that they were before the JavaScript runtime that you're talking about, right? Okay. It's called Uptrace Bun. So it is literally the same name, but it's not the Node whatever runtime. But it's called it's made from some guys called Uptrace.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was going to mute yourself, and if you were saying that you were rewriting your data layer in TypeScript.
Yeah, guys, I'm doing SPAs again. I love it. I want to go back to the pain.
I know.
No. Yeah, but it was a very interesting exploration, because as I started out wanting to centralize this, and Bun, the not JavaScript runtime, does have support for hooks, so I could technically centralize the like access logic and those kind of things. But I ended up switching for a completely different reason, simply because it was more economic. More ergonomic is what is the word I'm trying to to use, I feel, instead of having the compilation step and writing the thing.
So what does it give you exactly? So what it is it like, so for example, where are the SQL, the SQL queries written in that environment?
So it's like they still write it, so it's more of like it's called a builder pattern, right? So you get like some builder patterns to query the data out, and then I can centralize a little bit easier on an entity that matches better the I'm starting to use a lot of words like domain entities, domain models, whatever we want to call them, like business objects. Whereas before I had that, and then the database entity or the database row representation of that was generated through SQLC, which is one of my qualms with Rails, where like a model is like a one-to-one representation with the database table, and I never really wanted that. I wanted like to express how I saw the domain entity in code, which is not necessarily the same as the underlying database table that stores it, right? Because you can have enums, you can have different kinds of elements on it, so it allows me to easily like remove the whole two struct kind of thing that I had before. So now I just have one struct, which is the entity that I can represent as I want with custom types, and make it map a lot closer to the. It's annoying because I want to say entity, but it's also a domain object. But I hope the point comes across what I'm trying to say. So that I think that's one of the really big things. And then I'm being able to quickly build out the queries using the builder pattern. I just felt was nicer. Like I felt it was faster and easier to do that, and they still get minimal amount of overheads, and you can always drop down and do raw SQL if you want to.
So when you say builder pattern, so you are chaining functions together. There's probably a function like a where, a group by, and things like that. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So it's a little bit more like an ORM then.
Yeah, we get a step closer to an ORM without it actually being an ORM. Okay. So yeah, I want you to admit that. Well, yeah.
No, but if it fits the bill better for you, it's good. I mean, so you fix your issues with the hooks and whatnot.
I actually did not. I ended up not using the hooks anymore. I ended up completely just going because this is again, feeling shouldn't really exist in engineering, right? But it feels like this is more economic to work with. So I'm gone completely 180, not full ORM because it is not an ORM. It does build proper queries under the hood. Simply because you can do like select where, those kind of things. So that is what it builds up, right? So there's a minimal amount of overhead compared to using something like GORM. But I'm also not sure I'm going to stay with it. So right now I've gone in that path. I've not done a new release. I am going to be rewriting some of my models in my bigger project called Deploy Crates that's starting to grow a bit, and then see how it feels. Test out the patterns, and then if it actually is better, then I will switch over, right? So, but it is like the goal of Anecdotal is to make web developments feel as economic or as fast as Rails, but in Go. So this is like the guiding principle. So yeah, if an ORM is that path at one point, maybe I'm not happy with it, but I mean that is the guiding principle, right? So. And also you can, I think a lot of like time you can end up over optimizing because Go is fast as it is a lot faster. You can use GORM and then compare it to a Rails application, and you'll probably still be way faster, even though you don't have the same amount of control, right? Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, totally.
Going away from SQLC at least for the foreseeable future, and then see how that actually end up working out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always surprised about the reaction about SQL C, SQLC. It's very mixed. It seems. Personally, I like it a lot, but I'm also on the camp of some people that say sometimes when you need more dynamic queries, now you end up with a lot of case in your queries,
Yeah.
and the case statement. And now you're trying to see, okay, if I'm passing this, I want to add this where clause and things like that, and you kind of use it. And personally, I don't find it that disturbing, but again, I recognize that it kind of it makes the queries a little bit more complex. But what I really like about SQLC is that, well, you just pick the query and you run it, and you can use an executing plan or explain and whatnot, and you don't need to do much other than, because if I return to what I was saying earlier, in the Microsoft world, there is a strong ORM mantra, if you will. So it's completely the reverse of what Go is in fact, because you have this entity framework things that is a huge ORM, and all of the project, most of the projects are using it. But where I was going with that, yeah. So if you want to select the SQL statement that is generated by this, well, you still need to. It's not that complicated. It's not really what I'm saying, but let's just say it's a little bit more involving and whatnot, because it did involve trying to print out somewhere. And
Yeah, I mean, it is awkward to do the dynamic queries, but I'm always of the opinion that just add scroll, Then you get like a query builder that you can do dynamically. Because not all of your queries are dynamic to that extent that you can do them with SQLC, and the few ones that you have that are that dynamic, just add SQL, just add scroll. Like it's a query builder. It's not an ORM. And then hopefully you centralize your data access to a central package, so you know where everything's going on with the database access, right? And then just use scroll, and you can get your dynamic queries, right? You can have two things, two packages or libraries in your projects.
Oh, totally. You can also use the built-in queries of the engine. I think we are having some lag, which is unfortunate.
Are we having lag?
We will need to manage that. I think so, yeah. But yeah, we can always use the built-in function of the engine. So in Postgres, there's some functions or queries that can be created directly in the app or in the server itself. So there's always like that. So I remember the application that I've inherited. There was it's called stored procedure in the Microsoft world. There were a ton of those. So that brings a lot of complexity, because now if you're deploying your application, the stored procedures needs to be changed as well. But the problem is, when you update the function in the server, usually you still have the old production application running. So I mean, this complicates the deployment a lot. I found, compared to having just the code doing the queries and whatnot. So that to me might not be a good advice today, but it was very, very popular in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah, those were really queries that were directly so stored procedure. So it was great, but because now you could change the behavior of your program without deploying. And because if you take the example that I'm talking about, the main application was a Visual Basic 6 application. That was very, very hard to deploy because of the dependencies L and whatnot. So you tend to at that time in that old time, you tend to have a very, very separate. How can I say that? The data querying was really separated from the application itself.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds. That I don't know.
It's an old world.
Is it over? I was trying to. I don't have any experience with it, so I don't know. It sounds difficult at least. Sounds like we progressed a bit.
Oh, it was well. The deployment is I think there's an episode to do only on that. But if I return a little bit to static backend and today's situation, for me, database comes always. How can I say that? Full text search is always something that I'm finding I need with most of the application that I'm building, and static backend being the backend as a service layer that I'm using at the moment with the product that I'm building. Since first of all, it's an open source project, and I wanted to from the beginning handle all the database engines. So it handle all the SQL provider like Postgres and MySQL and whatnot. There's also a Mongo provider, a SQLite. There's an in-memory database provider. So I needed a way to extract the full text search and not be part of the database engine. So that was important, and I choose the Believe package of Go. Most people would have turned to Elasticsearch and these kind of external tool, but I wanted a service free solution. So I did not want to deploy any more dependencies or any more servers. So and don't get me wrong, I mean Elastic is a great full text search engine. It's not that at all. But again, the simplicity of static backends wants it to still be this one binary server that you deploy, and you basically have everything. And now I started the implementation of the full text search a long time ago. And the idea is just that in static backend, you define your entity. Let's continue with the word entity, which both we probably don't like, but you define your domain model, if you will, and this gets stored into the database in a JSON format. So that is very, very flexible. Might not be as performant as having real SQL database rows and whatnot, but still the flexibility is there, and this is what static backend is all about. Static backend is about creating an MVP, or at least a V1 for a software as a service. And once you have something, well, you can either scale that thing horizontally, which will work, or you can, I don't know, just migrate the data if it become a bottleneck at some point, which I doubt it would, but I'm not sure because I haven't built anything yet with it that scales to thousands of millions of rows and whatnot. So I needed a full text search capability that still works with the idea of having this one binary being deployed. And yeah, believe I'm not sure it's that well known, but it's still a very nice Go library and handle full text search pretty nicely. So what I've ended up doing is that you can, as the user of static backend, you can decide to have one main index in multiple tables. So basically you can have one table, one full text search index per table. So it's really like I don't really like this example, but it's like a Google like search engine where you have one search field and all the important information are there, and this get indexed, and it's pretty good. So if you take a real example of the product I'm building, there's this CRM module in there. So I can have the first name, last name, company name, the phone number, the email, all containing in this full text search field. And now this table is indexed, and I can let the user just have one one input for search, and it search into the important field of that thing. So that is how I implemented it. But the bottom line is that we do have a rich ecosystem now with Go very nice libraries that accomplish very very complex things. Of course, I could have used the full text search of SQLite and the full text search of Postgres, but each of them have a very different ways of indexing the fields and whatnot. And I wanted a unified solution for all of the data provider, and I think I implemented that pretty decently. Have you worked with full text search?
Yeah, I was about to ask because I was like, my mind immediately just jumped to using there's some Postgres extensions I've worked with before, but then I was like, yeah, because you probably support different data storage options, right? So you can just fix around one. But that's also the package is database agnostic. It also support the common, like how I'm a misunderstanding.
I do have one package per database engine. So imagine I do have, so in the database package, I have sub packages in there. So I have a Mongo, Postgres, SQLite, and memory, and those are all implementing one interface. So that it's not a good pattern in Go, but my interface is called the persister interface, and it has a lot of functions. So it's not like a one or two function interface. It's like a 40 function interface. But the point is, each provider implement that, and now if you want to use MongoDB, then you do have the same feel as when you are using Postgres. So at the end of the day, there's no difference at all. So that idea is not very popular in the Go world, but I really wanted something different, because when I started the project, it was on Mongo. So for me, it was clear that a JSON-based domain model that need to be saved to a database, well, it was a good fit for Mongo, and the reception I got was very bad, and some might say that, well, it's often the case on Reddit. when you post something, you will mostly get negative, but it made me think, well, maybe I could try to do a database agnostic data provider, and I wanted to do that first, just for the exercise of it, just to see how would that. So it was in a time where it was fun to write code. It was in a time where when you had this kind of problem, you were saying to yourself, you know what, I will just try that this weekend. So today it would just be probably way easier to just ask an LLM, but the amount of code that I wrote, and the tests are all the same. So that is something that I don't like about this part of static backend. So each data provider have the same, mostly the same test, and there's about a 75% test coverage in those things, but they are mostly all the same test, because at the end of the day, they are testing the function inside the interface, and they are mostly all the same. So not very good, but it's something that there's no reason for me to clean that up at this moment. But I'm pretty proud-ish of the database provider that I've built in static backend.
Nice,
because you don't see that a lot, multi provider like that.
No, I was just going, because when you asked if I had done any search before, I knew I had, but I couldn't remember the names. That's because it's a contract I did 4 years ago, which makes me feel a little bit old. But I did used to work with TypeSense. I'm actually not sure if that is still around. It was also just something that was thrown into my lap. I remember it being decent, but also, like I see what I did it in, like Ruby on Rails application. Yeah, added TypeSense, and then for another client, I used OpenSearch. All right. So I've done a little bit of search in my career, but it was also the reason why I asked about the data storage, because the last implementations I have done has been with BM25. I don't know if you're aware. It's like Postgres extension, and you get basically embeddings, so you can do a broader search. It's been actually been working quite well until I had a client who really wanted to drive it to the fullest and start to just create embeddings for everything, so the LLMs could ingest everything and search across it. But in general, I have good experience with BM25, and I have a few tabs somewhere in my gazillion open tabs of Postgres extensions that's built on top of it. So at least I know the Postgres story for data search seems to be going forward, but of course it's a different beast when you have to support a lot of different storage options like you do with static backup, right? So yeah, but it is something I'm thinking
the thing.
About. Sorry,
Yeah,
no, continue.
No, yeah, we. That's funny. Managing lags on the podcast is a very difficult aspect. I remember having a guest at some point. It was barely. It was very, very hard to conduct an interview with that amount of lags.
I mean, maybe there's football right now. I'm not sure, because the Spanish government gave La Liga access to ban certain IPs on like the network level. So whenever there's football here in Spain, they just block Cloudflare completely. I don't know if that's what's going on right now.
Potentially. But yeah, I'm to reply to yes, I'm aware of that, and I would have used Postgres because I'm a huge fan of Postgres, and I do like. I'm not sure I would have needed the embeddings, but just the normal full text search of Postgres is pretty decent. But yeah, I wanted a solution that would that would work with all the data providers and just be unified. That bring me to SQLite. I mean, again, SQLite have this crazy full text search indexing in there. Is there anything that cannot be done with SQLite? I'm seeing a lot of usage, more and more people that just say, "Oh, I just went with SQLite for for this project and whatnot," and might also be just a microservices, or even in organization. I'm seeing a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, we just are using SQLite." Just in this podcast, I've interviewed two people that were saying that they were using more like a event. How does it called? Not the event based. It's like your database is not really. Every time that you do an update, you kind of post a new line, and you accumulate those lines to have the source of truth of what is going on with your value. And now I'm completely blank out on the name, because I'm not using that technique myself. But even sourcing, and to my surprise, people are using a SQLite for these kind of things, because it's just, I mean, first of all, it's internal to the process usually. So for service that that you might not be using in a horizontal way. So there's way to use SQLite in with multiple instances and whatnot. But when it's really the best, in my opinion, it's when your process is just using it. So now it's communicating inter-process. So there's no network round trip with posting a lot of data and whatnot. So you are saving all of those things, and that makes SQLite a crazy fast option. And especially for those that are using event sourcing, because now each time that something is happening in your system, you're just inserting a line basically in a gigantesque table. So I mean, yeah, I keep saying it, but yes, SQLite to me is wow. I would have loved to be the author of that thing. It's a project I admire a lot.
I think Django is at fault for not having broader success. I don't know if that's true, but I remember when I first learned to program and using Django, they were very like, don't use SQLite, it's not for production. And I don't know if they started that saying, right, but it was clearly a thing when I started 10 years ago, that don't use SQLite for production. And then, a billion devices started using SQLite, right? So we were like, okay, maybe it can actually do some things. And I think like what I don't know if you're familiar with Terso. Have you heard about them before?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like what they're doing is also quite cool, because then you get the quote unquote local zero network DB for reads at least, and then of course you have the syncing handled by Terso, which I feel like is a cool setup. I've played around with it a little bit before. I know they have done some restructuring in the infrastructure, which has caused some issues. They were popular, and then they were not so popular for a while because apparently some of their things were beta and was to expect data deletion. I'm not really sure. There was some things going on, right? But they seem to have successfully migrated over. So I'm also following along what they do and what they are building, because it sounds like a very cool setup. Just spin up a bunch of servers, give them a database, and then have Terso handle the right syncing between them. Should really create some interesting applications. Actually, the founder of Terso was talking about how he was exploring. I don't know if he was joking, maybe he was, but he was like figuring out if UIDs was a proper format because he was worried for collisions in terms of like identifying customers' SQLite databases. So he made a big deal out of that on Twitter, because they wanted people to be able to create unlimited databases. So he was like, but what if some customer creates 1 billion database per second, per second? Which people of course were like, what are you talking about, man? But he sounded serious. Maybe he's not. Maybe we don't have the. I didn't have a good way of identifying if it was a sarcastic comment or not. But it looked like they're fully embracing like the agentic world. So all agents can just get their own database, whatever that means. I'm not really sure what that means, but I'm sure it works from a PR standpoint. Yeah. Whatever. What I'm trying to say is like SQL is cool, SQLite is cool, and I think what Terso is trying to do with it is seems like a very very interesting direction for a tool like that.
Yeah, totally. I will need to try that at some point. I guess that the write are still pretty fast, even though they are kind of, outside of. First of all, you're writing to your local copy, and now there's some kind of agent that replicates that into the other SQLites. Yeah. I don't know about the latency there, but because. Let's say that you're importing a huge CSV file for one user, so there's a ton of inserts that is going on. So how does it? Is it? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, is it like syncing real time, or it's like batching all of those inserts and whatnot? I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I can't remember. I read about it a long time ago. But you're right. It's a wild setup for how they actually deal with it. But I think it's a good time to check it out again. It seems like they made some real progress on the product and the whole setup.
Yeah, totally. It's pretty interesting what they have done.
Speaking of
database
agents.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I was also speaking of agents. I have also started exploring running local models now, like for the last week or so, which is very interesting. and it's very cool. It feels like magic in a box because you're able to run these things locally on your own machine instead of paying Scam Altman and Mr. Dario for something that doesn't really work and seems to be getting more and more expensive and degrading all the time. Right, so I've been exploring local models through the Chinese company called Gwen. I don't know if you heard about them. They are doing a lot of open weight models. And I think the latest one is around like 1.6 trillion parameters or something like that. So it's probably the biggest open weight model out there at the moment. And then there's another, I don't know if there's a provider or company, but there's something called Onslaught that takes those big gigantic model and then quantize them into different sizes and versions, not versions but different sizes, and then make it so that you can load them partially into your GPU. So I only have quote unquote 16 gigabytes of VRAM, but I'm actually able to run some of the higher quantized version, and then they split something into RAM. So I'm actually running a local model right now that seems to be on par with a stupid Claude. when they stupefy Claude, I don't know, ties legs together, whatever they do to handle the network traffic. It seems on par with that, and I'm actually getting like 70 tokens a second, which is, I feel like the same rate as like this response rate as you get with using something like Claude or Codex, but locally, right? So completely replace that with the local model, and the output seems cool, and it gave me a chance to revisit Tailscale. I don't know if you ever used Tailscale, but they have a really cool product, right? So now whenever I go out with my laptop, I just need to make my desktop running at home, and I have I have AI at home through a private network, which is super cool feeling. So I'm super hyped, but the output seems to be good, at least good enough, to the point where you can iterate with it if I want to, because it's free and I can just make it run. So I'm using another harness called Pi, which is very low, very bare bones is probably the better word for it. So it doesn't ship with a lot of like Claude is starting to spy on you, and they load in, I think it's 25,000 tokens or something in the system prompt. Pi does nothing of that, so it's actually feasible to run these models locally on the system. So yeah, I'm very, very excited about that. That was a little bit of a tangent. I know you always seem to revisit AI, but the local models setup seems to be going in a direction where we can actually use them and run them locally in a way where they are not just a waste of time. The earlier models didn't really work. I tried with some of the previous versions, and it was like it could run, but it ran very slow and it didn't really produce anything of worth. But now they're actually starting to come around and understand what you're asking it, implementing tasks, and So I just want to mention that's actually quite cool that we're getting to that point.
That is very interesting. Yeah, this to me feels way more like something I could buy in at some point, but you still need very good hardware and whatnot. But is the model specific to coding at all, or it's still a generic model that you're trying at the moment?
So it is special. It is around coding. It's Gwen 3.6. That they have a 35 billion parameter model, and they are using. I'm trying to find it now. Like something MOE. Of course, I can't remember when I'm talking about it. That's fun. Okay, it doesn't matter. They're using something around like condensed layers or something like that. So they MOE. Whatever MOE stands for, that I can't find right now. So it is like kind of using distillation in a way where they're taking the output from the larger models to create like productive coding experiences, as they say. So it understands code really, really well. And it seems to be able to call tools very, very well, especially with Pi, where there is not a lot of... maybe people have seen when you use Claude and they start to use Perl and Python and all kinds of weird stuff instead of just using the tool that comes with the harness, right? So it's good at calling edit tools, read tools, and it has curl installed, right? Or it knows how to use curl at least. So it's producing fairly decent code. I used it to try and implement an integration test in Andorra. So it ships with integration test in Andorra, and I had to make it understand that it was not writing a test for the framework, it was writing a test for the output of the framework, right? And it works, it understood it, and a little bit of guiding, right? It actually produced some tests that are running correctly by a little bit of guidance. So the same workflow as I would have with Claude, like do this, no, that's wrong, do this instead, right? And then iterate. It actually does, and it has thinking and agentic coding, which is just impressive for a model of this size, right? And I think I'm running with 128,000 token context window right now, which is a lot, locally at least. So more than enough. I know it's not the million that Claude and OpenAI are boasting about, but if you ever try to fill up a million token window, you know it becomes really stupid and doesn't work, and it just like nice that you can do it, but it's also, if you do it in practice, it doesn't work. So like 128,000 running at around 70 tokens per second is actually quite cool. And I ran 2 instances before we jumped on this call. And I was using around 30, let me see, what was it, like 40% of my GPU for running like 2 different processes in 2 different code bases. So yeah, very, very impressed. And I really think that this is the way to go with these kind of tools. I'm not convinced that the big setups that we are seeing I don't think that's the way, because the economics of it just doesn't make sense. But something like if they just sell you the model, then like buy a license to the model, and then you can run it on your developer's hardware. Like if you take what I'm doing here, rent a GPU in the cloud for, I don't know, $200 a month, and you can probably have like a couple of people using it and scale it up, right? Suddenly your cost is probably the same as you have now with your Claude Code subscription. But the usage is unlimited. You're not getting rate limited because you use it in the prime time or the peak time, whatever they call it, right? You're not getting your hands tied behind your back because they have like overloaded and they make it stupider or whatever it is they're doing right now to try and make it economic, right? So I think it's very exciting that we are seeing these models come out, and actually that I can run it on fairly affordable hardware. I mean, like the GPU, I have a 5070 Ti NVIDIA GPU. I think it's around €1,000. That is whatever it is in your guys' currencies. I don't know what, $1,200 or something like that maybe, at the time I bought it, which is much more approachable compared to like whatever $10,000 for some of the bigger GPUs you can buy from NVIDIA, right?
Yeah. For me, I would love to have a package. I would love it was where I thought it was going to go, when Nvidia started to, I don't know, invest into this. I thought it was going to be a package or a product that you could buy, a device that come with some model and RAM and GPUs and whatnot, and you plug that into your own. And now your home have, all the members have something to work with. That to me would be a great product.
That's true. But that's also why I was starting to play around with Tailscale again, because Tailscale released something called services, right? Where, I mean, of course, maybe people don't want to buy their own hardware, but it becomes, if they really want to do agentic coding, maybe it's something people should consider, because you can we are getting very close to the point where the quality is, of course, it's not gonna, it cannot match a full scale state of the art model. That's not possible, but that doesn't really matter, because as long as it's good enough and you can iterate for free at a fast speed, right, then you get a lot of the benefits of like the agentic coding. And then, either create a rack, add it to your Tailscale, and add your team members to your Tailscale network, and they can just access it and it's locked down, right? Or do it on a cloud provider. I don't know, because the people are getting used to paying. I had a friend, I think they paid like 20,000 euros per month for like AI access for the whole team, for the whole company, right? So if $20,000 or euros a month is normalized now, and they still have limits, or they probably don't have limits, right? But we're getting to the point where the money is so huge that you can probably half that, buy some hardware or rent a GPU in the cloud, do a little bit of setup, and then you're good to go, right? And it's like whatever, how much you want, kind of. There's no limiting, and you don't get surprised by new releases or changes to the system prompt and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm pretty tempted. Before there's no GPUs anymore nowhere, it might be a good time to secure one that is decent and try to play with that.
Yeah,
I would not do that on my development machine though. I would still want to have a dedicated server for that in my local labs, if you will, my local network. I could see myself trying to maybe try to take in an old servers that is lying there. I'm not sure if I would be able to place a newer GPUs in there in an old PC, and just install some kind of Linux in there, and that could be a good option for me.
I mean, also what is depending on availability, right? But the 30x something NVIDIA series should still be very affordable and provide decent amount of VRAM. And then there's also the 4090, I think it is. If people are willing to play around with it. But I mean, I have 16 gigs of VRAM, right? If you even go up to the larger versions, you get 24. I get a couple of 16 ones, so you get 32. That's just a lot of really exciting options. Because I'm not running. Generally, you would probably run something like the 4-bit quantized model. I'm running the 6-bit right now without any real issues. So the fact that like on 16 gigabytes of VRAM, you can get a couple of those, jump up for okay-ish amount of money, and you can start to run like even higher parameter models, which is I think I'm very excited about this. I had a lot of fun with this during the weekend or last week.
Sounds cool. How do you install this? Is it like a Docker image or something like that? Is it like simple to bootstrap?
It's fairly simple. You need, you don't. I'm not sure you need it, but I use Llama or Llama on English, C++ or CPP, whatever, to run it. I'm sure you can use Ollama. You could probably also use LM Studio if you like a GUI or TUI or whatever to set it up. And then you simply I just download the model from Hugging Face with whatever quantization you want. Then I have a little bash script that calls the model with some parameters. You set the context, you set how many GPU layers. I mean, it's something. It's like go on the free version of ChatGPT and you get like, hey, I want to run this with this hardware, and it will spit something out, and that's fine. And then you're good to go, and you have like a local host, whatever port you set it to, and then you just do. It has like OpenAI compatible API endpoints, and then like you're off to the races. That's it. It is very. I mean, it's very, if you've done like some, like, if you're just downloading some programs and then you're downloading a file and then you're saying like, here's the file, please run that, and you're going with your own little localized model.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm this once I have some money to spare on hardware, I will probably try that. Sounds interesting.
I immediately jumped into like thinking, like starting to try and plant the seed in my wife's head that we should definitely have like a rack in our apartment. I can just buy a rack, and like, had you seen the PewDiePie video where he builds his own? Look how cool that is.
Yeah.
And then like I can always sell it,
It's already so hot in your apartment in Spain. I mean, how do you cope with the new heat that will be inside?
My new job is just to stand next to it with a fan and trying to cool it down. Something like that. I don't know.
That's all we can do now. All right, Morten, that was great. So I think we will close the episode. We have so many lags now. So
I just want to, before we cut it, I just want to say, Bun is an SQL first Golang ORM, not ORM. SQL first. I don't want to completely sell myself to the ORM. Yeah.
If you want. All right, sir. Talk to you next week.
All right. Talk to you later, man.